Newly confirmed Attorney General Todd Blanche refuses to say he'll always act independently of the White House. On NBC's Meet the Press, Blanche said no attorney general should make that pledge. Watch.
No, I'm not going to pledge that. And no attorney general should ever pledge that. The president, if I were to pledge I will be independent of the White House, what that means is that if President Trump says, I want the Department of Justice to go after every violent criminal in this country, which is what he has said, what you're saying to me is I should say, no, sir, I'm not going to do it.
Live now to CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen. So, Jake, does Blanche's position differ from the way things have always been? If so, explain.
It does, and I think in one way it completely breaks norms, and on the other really fits into what this administration has conveyed across every cabinet department, specifically the Department of Justice, which is that there is a unitary executive and that every cabinet secretary and every employee of the executive branch works for President Trump. Every employee of the government works for President Trump because he is in charge. We've heard this not simply just from the Department of Justice, but, in the context of what Todd Blanche has to navigate here, his comments are extremely notable because while Todd Blanche may be able to go on another network and say that obviously he would take orders from President Trump, but President Trump, doesn't just call him and order him to bring up a prosecution against a potential enemy or direct him on what to do. We saw one of those messages meant to be private go public last year to former Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was then fired for not accomplishing President Trump's goals fast enough, which was to prosecute people like Letitia James and James Comey and those legal challenges and legal cases brought against them that fell flat upon any amount of scrutiny. And again, when you put in the context of this confirmation battle for Mr. Blanche, in how he had navigated this anti-weaponization fund, he needed essentially approval from the White House to say that that $1.8 billion fund that could have paid out rioters from the January 6th attack at the Capitol, he needed approval from the White House to navigate that confirmation battle as well and to introduce this new settlement language. So certainly just a complicating issue that Democrats say and have said since he was appointed in the first place as Deputy Attorney General. When you put in a president's former defense attorney into this position of power, it's no secret that there will be conversations between the two of them, and it's no secret that he may be willing to go a little bit further than somebody else. And when you have somebody like President Trump, who posted last fall that Pam Bondi needed to speed up the speed of her investigations and eventually firing her for not doing so or not being able to accomplish that goal, thus resulting in Blanche getting the spot. Certainly just notable as kind of a marker of the beginning of the Todd Blanche's time at the Department of Justice and how President Trump responds to what the Department of Justice does in the next 18 months.
Still, though, Blanche insists the president has really never asked him to prosecute a specific person. So what do these comments tell us about how he plans to lead the Justice Department and whether they're likely to ease the concerns that we heard in confirmation hearings?
I think we'll have to see how this plays out. Just a couple of things for our audience to remember and for them to pay attention to in the next couple of months. The Department of Justice is going to have to appeal and work on an appellate argument in the case of the Letitia James and James Comey prosecution, which was dismissed late last year because President Trump's handpicked choice, a former White House staffer to run a prosecutor's office that brought those charges, was dismissed, and the DOJ is going to appeal that. Those criminal cases could still be a live ball, and around the same time, read James Comey's 8647 indictment on that for that seashell Instagram post that was taken down. That all is going to be litigated in court coming up this fall as well. If you look into court filings in just those two specific cases alone, outside of all the other noise and cases that the Department of Justice is working on, there are allegations and accusations by Comey and James' legal teams that there is direct White House involvement in their prosecutions and top-down, whether it's surveillance of Mr. Comey and his wife after that Instagram post was made, or a top-down directive to prosecute and bring these cases that wouldn't necessarily be how things would be brought if there was a traditional firewall between the DOJ and the executive branch, not looking at the evidence first and then choosing to prosecute, but instead of looking at the person, applying a crime, and then investigating after the fact.
The brilliant mind of Jake Rosen, reporting live from Washington, D.C. Thank you for breaking all that down for us. We appreciate it.